What's up, folks? Welcome back to TacticalTortoise. My name is Trevi, and welcome to another ridiculous rules video. Today we're going to be talking about a specific component of the fight phase, and this is going to act as a bit of an addendum to an upcoming video that I have talking all about the fight phase and combat movement in Warhammer 40k. The rule we're talking about today is Fight on Death. This is an umbrella of a rule that governs abilities or rules that allow a model to attack even though it has been destroyed. Generally speaking, the verbiage included in the current wording of these abilities allows a model to resolve its attacks in the fight phase when it's destroyed after the attacking unit has resolved all of its attacks. However, Rule 050405 inside the inflict damage step on the Warhammer 40k app actually overrides these rules with a new set of mechanics. In this rule, it describes that any models under the effect of a fight on death effect, that being a rule that enables a model to attack after it has been destroyed, it instructs those models to stay on the battlefield until their unit is selected to attack and has attacked, at which point they will be removed from the battlefield and trigger any rules that are resolved when that model is destroyed, such as Deadly Demise, for example. This occurs even if a destroyed model is instructed to fight immediately after the attacking unit has resolved its attacks, and instead of being removed from the battlefield immediately, they exist in sort of a state of limbo until such time as their unit gets a normal fight activation or the fight phase ends for some other reason. Well, in previous editions, these kind of mechanics forced units to split up their attacks into multiple mini activations, where multiple enemy units attacking you would kill individuals inside the unit and then cause those fight on death effects to trigger, and created some weird rules situations as a result of that. These new rules will essentially mean that all units, even ones being affected by both normal fight and fight on death effects, will always bundle their attacks into a single activation. While waiting for those attacks to resolve, models being affected by a fight on death ability exist in sort of a state of limbo. Because they are destroyed but not removed from the battlefield, they can't receive any further damage. However, they will remain on the battlefield as part of their parent unit and as a miniature on the table. They can be targeted by attacks, which cause the remainder of their unit to be attacked. They can engage enemies, and they can even be measured to and from for abilities. This is explicitly broken down in the GW Open Tacoma FAQ, which occurred recently. And it creates a lot of really weird rule situations, which we'll discuss now. So we're going to hop on over to Tabletop Simulator here to showcase some of the interesting rules situations that can arise from fight on death abilities. We have a good example of a fight on death unit here, this unit of Chthonian Berserks. This is a Leagues of Votann unit that has a datasheet ability that causes them to have a chance to fight when they are destroyed after the attacking unit has resolved their attacks. This means that it's affected by fight on death rules and will follow the sequence outlined in Rule 050405. So let's say in this instance that this unit of Chthonian Berserks has been charged by a unit of Tyrannid Genestealers. The Genestealers are successful at destroying the unit and killing all of the Chthonian Berserks. They'll then roll to see whether they fight on death, and any models that do roll successfully will remain in play until such time as their unit is selected to fight. This means that if we move over to subsequent combats over the course of the fight phase, so for example, we also see a charge from the Swarmlord here, who's going to attack a unit of Heinhir Hearthguard. Then we move over to the Votann player's turn to select remaining combats. The Hearthguard end up fighting the Swarmlord. Then, once the Votann player goes back to select remaining combats, the Chthonian Berserks that have rolled to fight on death are eligible to fight. They're in a unit that has been engaged since the start of the fight phase, and they have not yet been selected to fight. Even though the unit might be destroyed because they're being affected by that fight on death ability, they're still on the battlefield, which means they can be selected. They get selected, they resolve their attacks, and once their attacks are resolved, at that point, we resolve their final destruction. We resolve any additional effects that would occur when they are destroyed, and they are finally removed from the battlefield. However, the fact that they do not get removed from the battlefield can create some really bizarre situations. Let's say, for example, that we've engaged a Chthonian Berserk unit with multiple Tyrannid attackers. We have a Tyrannid Prime over on one side versus a unit of Genestealers. Now, in some cases, you would actually be able to restrict the number of Genestealers that could attack you. If the unit completed their charge and piled in, and we're only able to get a couple of models into engagement range of the target unit, you could actually remove casualties when the first attacker fights. So, for for example, let's say this Tyranid Prime attacks and kills these Chthonian Berserks. We actually pull casualties to pull several of the Genestealers out of engagement range, but we keep them in engagement so they cannot perform an overrun fight. In this situation, you would normally force only one Genestealer to attack you. As the Chthonian Berserk player, that's pretty cool, because we pulled this model that the majority of the Genestealer unit was engaging. We can see this guy had 3 models within 2 inches of him. He gets pulled as a casualty. These guys are not within 2 inches of any other models in the unit, which means only one Genestealer would fight. Sounds pretty good, except these guys are affected by a fight on death ability, which means that when the Tyranid Prime attacks, all of the models that have been destroyed instead move into in the state of limbo. We're going to color their bases red so that we know that they are to be destroyed later on. This means that when the Tyranid player goes to select his next unit, all of these Genestealers still have a Chthonian Berserk in their melee range. So they are still able to attack this unit despite the fact that damage has been allocated to that model and he is, at this time, destroyed. So in that way, Fight on Death can actually make you easier to attack for subsequent attackers. And with all these Genestealers fighting, it's likely that the entire Chthonian Berserk unit will be killed. Now, of course, they won't actually be removed from the battlefield until such time that they attack, in which case a bunch of them will attack the Tyranid Prime, a couple of them will attack the Genestealers, and then at that time, they will finally be removed. And as just a note, I do want to reiterate that these rules only come into play if the model is being affected by the Fight on Death rule. So when they're destroyed, if it's a random chance to fight on death, you would roll to see if they fight on death, and any models that do successfully roll to attack after they're destroyed would then remain in play. If all of these models, for example, failed their Fight on Death roll, they would just be removed immediately. Now let's talk about the truly unhinged way that this rule can resolve. Let's say that the Tyranid player has set up a very careful situation. They've gotten their last ship Tyranid Prime to charge and pile in around the side of this Chthonian Berserk unit, and then dual charged into that unit with a unit of Genestealers. It's likely that the Genestealers would be able to kill the entire Chthonian Berserk squad, removing them from the equation, and then allowing this last ship Tyranid Prime to pile in towards this unit of Hearthkin Warriors. The Hearthkin Warriors are on an objective. They're threatening to OMSEC this objective. The Tyranid player really wants to kill them. However, the Chthonian Berserks have a Fight on Death. So when the Genestealers go to attack them, instead of being killed, let's say the Genestealers, because they're able to get 100% of their models in range, are able to fully destroy this unit. However, as you've discussed before, because they have Fight on Death, any of those models that roll to Fight on Death enter a state of limbo. The Leagues of Votann player rolls and determines that these two models are going to fight on death. In this case, when the Tyranid Prime is selected to fight, he can no longer perform an overrun fight because he is currently in engagement range of an enemy unit. He's in engagement range of the Chthonian Berserks. Both of these Tyranid units charge, so they have to fully resolve their fight activation in the fight's first step of the fight phase. So the Genestealers come in, they charge these Votann models, they kill a couple of them, a couple of them fight on death and remain in play. The last ship Tyranid Prime gets activated, goes to attack, and finds that it cannot overrun because it's engaged, and when it targets the Chthonian Berserks with all of its attacks, they'll suffer no further damage because they are already destroyed. In this case, the Votann player, because he has access to this Fight on Death, entirely prevented this Tyranid Prime from getting to these Hearthkin Warriors and actually clearing the objective from them. It can totally stifle overrun fights and any sort of multi-combat that you might want to initiate. After all the fights first have been resolved, at that time, the Chthonian Berserks would fight, swing into the Tyranid Prime, and then be removed. However, since the Tyranid Prime has already fought, it will not get an opportunity to attack the Hearthkin Warriors. It'll just consolidate as normal. Being able to stifle overrun fights with effects like these makes Fight on Death stratagems or activated abilities incredibly useful, and it can make units with a built-in Fight on Death really awkward to engage in for a lot of melee armies. But with that, that's this rules video for today. Let me know down in the comment section what you think about this mechanic. It's a bit of a weird one. Thanks for watching all the way to the end of the video. Thanks as well to everybody who supports Tactical Tortoise, whether that's over on Patreon at patreon.com/TacticalTortoise, YouTube channel members, and Twitch subscribers. All you people are amazing, and I love you. Remember to keep it classy, folks, and have happy wargaming.